Being a creative is incredibly rewarding, but it also presents its own unique set of challenges to navigate. The Prime Creative Podcast is here to give you the roadmap to creative success. So sit back, relax, grab your pen, notebook, and your favorite beverage, and enjoy this episode of the Prime Creative Podcast. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Prime Creative Podcast. My name is Troy Woods. I'm your host. Super excited for this episode today. It actually didn't take a long time to make this happen. We talked about this, I think, in my last shoot here. But I'm excited to be with Charles Butler today. He is the owner-operator of Union 206 Studios in Alexandria, Virginia. Now, if you're a creative in the DMV area market, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. But I'm excited to have him on the show today. Looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to the show, Charles. How are you, buddy?
Glad to be here.
Good, man. So look, I'm not gonna waste any time. I want to get into it because I have been thinking about what I wanted to talk to you about on this episode. And I think I want to get back to the beginning because you don't just open up a space like this, just go from, say, corporate to, hey, I'm going to open up a studio without having some part of the creative journey yourself.
Sure.
So let's start there. Like, what was your journey as a photographer and how did you get started?
How far back you want me to go? So I'll be brief. I was born pretty poor, single mother, absentee mother because she was working two jobs. But I've talked to many people who have much worse lives, but it's just where I started. And early on, I said, I wanted to be wealthy. I used to get these, the Rob Report. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it. I don't even know if it still exists, but it's a magazine that sells like Lamborghinis and Rolexes and things like that. And I would just dream, right?
Right.
And so I went through, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because this is my not creative journey, but I went through a number of various things, ended up making $250,000 a year, House of Potomac, country club. And I married my ex-wife is Jewish, so we were part of Woodmont Country Club. And I was probably the most unhappy I had ever been in my entire life.
Really?
So I kind of said, you know what? Everything we're told works for some people, right? Some people would love that life and it would be a good life for them, but we're all individuals.
Right.
So I said, okay, taking everything I know, it's probably my early 30s. I said, what do I want my life to look like? Forgetting about what society tells us or what's on TV or what the Kardashians are doing or anything like that.
Right.
What do I really want? And I said, I want to be creative. So my background and I sold my company, it was a tech company.
Okay.
Got a divorce, moved on to a sailboat.
Really?
Made a good amount of money selling the business, but also just cut my expenses down to nothing.
Okay.
I think I paid $20,000 for that sailboat and lived on it for a few years.
Wow. Okay.
That's another part of my life, sailing. But and I said I want to be a photographer. And I'd always been, when I was 16, I was in school. I had photography classes. I'd saved up $800 for my first Nikon. Can't remember what model it was at this point in time. And I had it for about a year. I was taking pictures of everything and developing the school's dark room, and I had a Volkswagen Beetle. And on those Beetles, you can like pop that wind. That little triangle.
Yep.
And I broke down about a mile from my house, walked home. The next day I came back and the door was open, and I was like, I left my camera in that car. It was gone. And $800 for me at that time was 2.5 years of savings.
Wow. Okay.
And I was 17. So I left, joined the military. I was in the submarine force. Life moved on, got out of the military, started web design at my last shore duty in the military.
Okay.
Just little, like, back then, dating myself, but back then, you'd go to there was Blockbuster, but there was always these little mom and pop video stores
Yep,
too.
yep,
I
yep.
don't know how old you are, but
I'm
you got a little
47.
gray in your beard too.
47.
All right.
I'm tracking everything.
So I would say, hey, this web thing is really cool. You can advertise. So I was doing those, not making a lot, just kind of side gig.
Right.
Got out. Anyway, went into business, worked for a large national company, transitioned to tech, worked for Orbital Sciences for quite a while, and then went and started my own tech company.
Okay.
Fast forward, sold that. I guess you can cut some of this out if it's too much back history.
No. This is all good.
Sold that. I'm a sailboat. I want to be a photographer. So I'd always been into photography. I've had Helmut Newton books, but as a more of an observer, an artistic observer.
Right.
And went through courses at New York Institute. I mean, I knew I could shoot on manual at that time, even before, while I had my business. But
shoot on M. Go ahead.
But I couldn't take good photos.
Okay.
I didn't know what rule of thirds was. I didn't know anything about composition or texture or those kinds of things. So I went through the New York Institute of Photography. They had a correspondence class. Took that, started shooting. Got pretty lucky. Now, I was fortunate because I had quite a bit of money in the bank.
Okay.
I had also reduced my lifestyle. I paid I just reduced my overhead. So I bought a boat. I owned a boat. I had no rent. Right. Okay. Marina fees,
Right.
But insignificant.
Hey everyone, listen, I hope you all are enjoying this episode of the podcast, but I just wanted to stop for a moment to tell you about my favorite camera bags in the whole world by Think Tank Photo. And you guys, I think they're my favorite because the build quality is absolutely phenomenal. Listen, right here, I have my Production Manager 50 and I also have my Airport International Series roller bags. These camera bags go with me everywhere. Now in this particular bag, maybe I have a couple of camera bodies and some lenses and speed lights, or maybe I'll have all of that as well as my strobes, my light stands to include my C-stands, light modifiers, you name it. Everything that goes in here, I always know that my gear is going to be protected, whether I'm traveling through the city or whether I'm on and off airplanes. I promise you, these bags, this equipment will protect your gear. Now, maybe you're not in the market for a roller bag. Maybe you're looking for something in the backpack style. Maybe you're looking for something for cable management or your memory cards. Think Tank Photo is going to have everything that you need. So I want you to go to thinktankbags.com. That's thinktankbags.com. Go through the inventory, see if there's something that you like, and I promise you, if you invest in one of these bags, you will not be disappointed. Now let's get back to the episode.
And I was really focused on art. And the one cool thing about when you get really focused on something is you don't do anything else. So I was obsessed with photography.
Okay.
And when you're obsessed with photography, I mean, you buy camera gear, but you don't go out to eat a lot because you're learning Photoshop.
Right.
You don't go. I mean, I've always been into motorcycles. I wasn't riding motorcycles because I was time away from my camera. I was time away from my thing. So, really, I was probably living on like $1,000 a month, easy or less.
Wow.
That time, and I had plenty of savings, right? So. Right. This is going to play into why I started Union 206 a little bit later. So I went through and I started shooting, and I got my first. I wanted to do creative stuff. That's right. Remember, that was the whole goal. But I had a business background. I had a background in marketing. So now, as a studio owner, seeing 300, 400 members, something like that, seeing new and experienced pros coming through the studio, marketing your business is, if you're a photographer, you're an entrepreneur. If you're an artist selling your art, trying to live on your art, you have a small business.
Right.
And a lot of people get caught up in what's natural to them, right? The art. And I was fortunate, and it was a challenge because I was fortunate that I understood marketing better than I understood art. So anyway, so I got my first gig. I had started shooting models.
Okay, because I was about to ask you when you were interested, what type of photography were you doing?
So no matter how much money I might have in the bank or not, or how many months I could go or years I could go without an income, I still judge myself by, okay, I'm not a professional until I'm making money, right? I'm not, if the market decides whether I'm a professional or not.
Right.
I can
That's good.
daydream and, whatever, but until somebody's like, I will pay you to do this thing for me, and then pays me and then says thank you very much. Until that happens, I didn't feel like I was legit.
Right.
So I I shot a young girl. She was 17, senior in high school. It wasn't a senior pick though. Her mom knew me from previous life, is out in Potomac, and wanted a modeling port for her daughter to go be a model.
Okay.
And so I shot her photos, and they were impressed enough that she was showing them all around school. So I had all these high school girls coming in.
Okay.
And I would charge them $500 for a 5 to 10 photo portfolio. So that might be 3 or 4 clothing changes, something like that. And it was good. It was a little grunt work, but it wasn't the super creative stuff that I wanted to do, but I wasn't capable of doing the super creative stuff that I wanted to do at that time. So I looked at the industry, back to my business background. I looked at vertical markets, and I said, where do photographers lay? I use the analogy. Photographers are like doctors, in that you might be a neurosurgeon and I might be a podiatrist. People are going to come to me when their feet have problems, and they're going to come to you when their head hurts. Right. So we specialize. And so I I've been shooting some other models too. I started building this sort of model port. I don't know if that's possible today. The world's changed a little bit with Instagram and social media, but at the time there, you couldn't just go take a great photo of yourself. Now my phone has a filter that does a lot of the work that I was doing back then. But anyway, so I went to Georgetown, where all the boutiques were.
Okay.
And I knew it'd be difficult for me with no real portfolio or ad experience. I knew I wanted to do advertising. To walk into, the Gap or, a big fashion house and say, hire me for your next $20,000, photo shoot. So I decided I'd go and get mom and pop stuff, right? I'd go and get the small boutique single owners. And there's a bunch of those in Georgetown at the time. So I went down there and I found a boutique, went with a friend of mine who was a model, and we went and found a boutique that I liked the vibe, like the clothing vibe for. Bought a bunch of clothes, took them back, shot them on this friend of mine, made an ad, and then contacted the owner and said, this is your next ad. Here's how much it costs. Now, keep in mind, I didn't say...
For the boutique?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't say to the boutique owner, I have photos for you. I said, here is your ad. She could just take it and run it like it was done. And that was the hook.
Okay.
Right? Because Miriam was her name, first client, first real client. She told me, she's like, she'd had photographers before, and they'd give her, that back then they were doing a lot of CD-ROMs, but they give her like CD-ROM or hard drive or something with photos on it. But now she's got inventory. Somebody called out sick Sunday. She's running her own small business, and she's like, they just stay in the drawer. I sent her a full ad. I still went to their website, stole their logo, put it on their ad, made up a little cool tagline for them. And it's like so many things in photography. She told her friends. So soon I had boutique businesses, and then went into some hair salon work, beauty work, that kind of thing. So that's...
And this is still predominantly in the Georgetown area. So what I'm interested in is when it became word of mouth, was a demographic kind of right there in the same area, or was it around the city? Or
initially it was in Georgetown.
Okay. Okay.
And I didn't live in Georgia. I was still I didn't live in Georgetown, so it was still a bit of a hike. So but most of my business was in DC.
Okay.
And so I needed a studio in DC. So it was hard to find studio space in DC. And even though, I didn't cut my expenses down, I had some money to lease and run and heat and cool and have electricity and parking and all those things in DC was It was a lot of money
And
every
what
month.
and about what year are we right now?
2004, 2003,
Okay. Okay.
2004, probably
Wow.
something like
Okay.
that. And the other problem I had, so there was a space down on Ninth and P area,
Mm-hmm.
Ninth and O maybe, and so I'd rented that space, and it was kind of horrible. It was one of those. It was a rental that it was good because it taught me later when I said, I'm going to do this studio thing. It taught me what not to do, but
Mm-hmm.
it was number code. You'd email the owner. You never met the
Okay.
owner.
Okay.
There was no community to it. There was no people. It was you'd email, you'd send your money, he'd send you a code, you'd put the buttons in, you'd walk into a disaster because the last person, he hadn't been there in a week, and the last person that was shooting didn't, that they're done with their shoot, they just walk out.
Right.
So you have to book an extra hour just to clean up to get ready for your clients. Um, but it was in DC.
Right.
So, but then I had like makeup, so I was using makeup artists and things like that at that time, by then. And I had a makeup artist who had a car broken into, and parking was painful. And if you've got 3 models parking 4 blocks away, trying to walk in high, it wasn't a sustainable solution.
Gotcha.
So I said, I need my own studio. I had work at that time. I mean, I was working fairly regularly at that time. So,
And all you were doing at this time was photography.
yeah.
Okay.
Since when I sold my business, I played around with the stock market a little bit.
Right.
I played poker a little bit.
Okay.
Made a little money at poker. Thought about being a professional poker player, but that is a boring ass job. I mean, to play good poker,
Yeah.
you have to sit there and for a long time not playing hands. And anyway, that's another story. Past not traveled, right?
Gotcha.
So I started looking around in DC. Parking was bad everywhere. It didn't matter where you were, and if you were, you could go to Mazza Galleria,
Mm-hmm.
but again, parking, right? And
Right.
models don't have metro access was important too. And if you look around real estate and commercial real estate, so we couldn't shoot in a house. I needed high ceilings.
Right.
So commercial real estate around metro stops is much more expensive than 5 blocks away. Right. But I can't have my clients and subjects walking. So ended up in Old Town on 206 Union Street.
Okay.
It was a factory. They had a conveyor belt that ran between 3 floors. My son used to ride it. They made munitions and this. If you look at a top-down map of Old Town,
mm-hmm.
where the torpedo factory is,
mm-hmm.
and you flipped the page on King Street,
mm-hmm.
that's where. So it's just opposite side of King Street from where the torpedo factory is. And it was a cool old building, brick, no air conditioning.
Oh. And
the heater was that big industrial heater. We have one in Studio C here, which was fine, but it got hot in there in the summertime. Now I had IT background, so we brought in like server coolers that would.
Oh, okay.
And it did okay, but it was not. It was really cool, but we couldn't do the kind of the level of work we do here.
Right
there. It was more of a clubhouse.
Gotcha.
So I rented the second, and then eventually the third floor. The first floor was like we parked motorcycles in there, but it was just like entryway, big steep steps. The Old Town buildings. And I was shooting out of there, and I had a assistant by then handling like talking to clients and things like that. And I was probably doing. So back to the business of photography, what I noticed, because I was a business guy, so I'd look at my cash flow and my numbers month to month and year over year and those kinds of things. And what I noticed is I'd be super busy. Let's say in July, I was super busy. And then in August, I wasn't busy at all. And then in September, I was super busy. And the reason was I was busy shooting, not marketing at all. Suddenly I had no gigs or very few gigs for the next month.
Right.
So then I'd go out and market and talk to people, and then I'd get big gigs. So I needed this there. So it was this 2 month, really, when you broke the year down, it had to do in 2 months because one was marketing and one was shooting the stuff that you earned. Um, Photography is very much eat what you hunt kind of business.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I don't love about photography is I like businesses where there's constant cash flow, right?
Right.
There's even if it's just a trickle, there's some money you can count on every month. And then um, if you have, a big job, great, but you need to be stable to do
Mm-hmm.
anything and to
Mm-hmm.
do anything well. And even as an artist, if you're constantly worried and anxious, your art's going to suffer.
Yes, that's an interesting point. I just put out a video recently talking about this, and because I've been doing this for a while now, full time for about 7, 8 years,
Mhm.
and from the outside, people look look at a full time creative, and they don't really, especially if they have a 9 to 5, and they don't like their 9 to 5. They're like, oh man, that's great, but they don't really understand, like you were saying, the ebbs and flows.
Right.
And so what I begin to notice is this time of the year specifically is always mentally draining because season's slowing down. It's like you got 2 months of holidays back
Right.
to back. And it's not like the, 4th of July where it's one day and it's over.
Right.
It's like once Thanksgiving starts hitting, that's like a 6 week lull that people are like, oh, okay, it's all about family. I'm shutting it down. And you're like,
Right.
okay, so that's what's been really interesting to me, and it sounds like it also ties into the marketing because if you're not shooting family stuff, if you're not a family photographer,
Yeah.
you're out of season,
Right.
kind of.
So in the commercial world, everybody's spending their budgets at the end of the year because they lose their budgets. Even
Right.
the government, I know, definitely like this, but corporations like this too. Corporations say you have 60,000 or 600,000 or 6,000 or whatever it is in your budget for this year, and invariably, a lot of that gets pushed to this time earlier than this for the Christmas season for retailers.
Mm-hmm.
But late summer was really busy for me at that time, and yeah, it's something you can't look at like what I'm doing this month or next month. Even you have to look at the year.
Right.
You have to say how much money am I going to make this year and
Right.
budget around that
Right.
based on your best guess. It's really hard getting started. It's one of the most so I teach some
Mm-hmm.
as well. I got into teaching as well. And every workshop I say who's here as a because this is their passion and their hobby, and who's here who wants to make some money. And invariably I'd say 90% of people want to make some money,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just weekend gig work. So I always uh, often am asked, how much should I charge?
Mm-hmm.
Is a common question. And how much do I need to go full time? Like Charles, how much would you save? And those questions are like, how long is a piece of string? It varies.
Right.
I cut my lifestyle way down, and had a bunch of money in the bank. So I was pretty lucky. Very, very fortunate. And, if you've got a couple kids and a mortgage, how much support do you have at home?
Mm-hmm.
If you are married or you have a spouse or somebody depends on you, are they on ball? Are they supportive of this? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's enough to fight. Making a living as an artist is a challenge. It's one of the reasons why 206 exists. And I guess we'll get to that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a challenge. You went through this, you're full time now. You have been for a while. It's a challenge. And there's tough times. And to add on um, people in your life fighting you or situations fighting you, whether it's financial situations or whatever, it's just too hard to do. It's not impossible, but
It's tough.
it's having a good support system or nobody. In my case,
Right.
I had after my second after my the divorce I've spoken was my second divorce.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, nobody's getting in my way anymore. Like
Right.
anybody in my life is either on board with what I want or they're not on board. And I'm married now. I've been for quite a while, and I told her that same thing. I was like, it's silly for you to be with me because I'm not going to compromise on things. And I totally get you should just walk away because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to compromise. So I say that to emphasize just kind of how committed you have to be to make a living full time as an artist.
Right.
You have to set boundaries. You have to say at any cost this, or no ahead of time say, okay, at this level, I'm pulling the plug. I'm giving myself 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't make it in 1 year, you can set those kind of goals. I don't like that concept, but we live in a real world, and
Right.
kids need to go to college and
Right.
stuff. So got to eat.
So as you mentioned going into off King Street. Was that the first location?
Yeah, that was the first Union 206. So
okay. So this is the second or third?
This is the third location.
Okay.
We're sitting in the third location.
Yeah. Okay. Because I think it's funny. I came around at the second location. Right. I literally had one shoot there, and they're like, "Yeah, we're moving." I'm like, "Well, all right." So the one I remember was over by Potomac Yards.
Yeah, that was
so the first location was actually, I guess, across
206 Union Street.
Okay.
2 blocks south of King Street.
Okay.
Right by the water.
Okay.
We had a lot of Chadwick's wings. If you know Chadwick, if you know Old Town, Chadwick's is a little bar pub. Have really great wings. And if you drilled through my back wall, you'd be in their kitchen. So
okay.
Just walk around.
And about how big was that first space?
1,200 square feet per floor, so 2,400 square feet.
Okay, so you had 2 floors.
2 floors.
Okay.
Yeah. We had a little psych wall. Not little. It was bigger than paper.
Okay.
The thing with paper is it's hard to shoot on. High heels tear it.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get the curve just right. And the biggest thing is most shots that you are going to light that are especially like fashion shots, you need a lot of distance between the back wall and your subject because you're going to be back hair lighting and it just needs to be space. I mean, I say that, and I know a lot of people don't have space and do great work. I'm very spoiled because I built a giant studio.
Right.
But on paper, you've only got 107 inches wide, and you can't get the subject too far back because even if you roll the paper out and waste the paper, now you've got to Photoshop the background back in. It's just challenge. It's just a challenge. And when you're doing commercial work, and when I moved into that 206 Union Street, I was probably shooting on the busy month. I probably had 4 shoots a week.
Wow. Okay.
Which was a lot. That's shooting is 20% of the job. The rest is editing, especially in fashion.
Right.
Or in commercials. So when people say, even to this day, back then I started saying it, but people say, "What do you do for a living?" I'm like, "I don't have a job. I have a lifestyle." It's some of my friends think that's a little snooty and laugh at me for it a little, but it's true. Like I'm never not working, but it's not work either. You know what I mean? Like even, I don't know, driving out in the country, you start looking at light coming through leaves and start thinking how can I recreate
your brain's
that?
always on. It's tough, man, because it's like you'll be with family and then you're like, you just can't take a regular picture with a phone. It's like, no, everybody turn this. It's like you're always trying to find the best angle, the best light, the best composition.
Right.
So it's,
and even other people like, "Oh, I'm gonna take a picture of this salad that I got. Wait, hold, go lower.
Right.
Go lower angle. Exactly. Wait, can we change that? Here, spin it this way. See the red and we got some color symmetry going on. Like, and you have to have people. That's what you have to have people in your life that are say, okay, I understand.
That's how
he or she, my partner, is really passionate about this and support it. Huh.
So fast forward to, let's say this location here. What are, you've been doing this for a while now. What are some of the challenges that you have seen?
Well, for somebody who might want to do this, right? I'm going to go through each space just briefly because they each had their own individual challenges.
Okay.
The first space, I had my assistant. I said, send off an email to photographers we know and see if anyone wants to rent the space. It was good little residual income. I thought we'd have 4 or 5, maybe even 10 people that would rent the space occasionally. She sent out emails. We had 50 members in our first month.
50?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I said, what's going on? Right.
Right.
we just found a vacuum, right? And why? And it was because digital was pretty new. Like
Mm-hmm.
the first cameras were out to the. I mean, they digital been out since the late '90s, but nobody had one,
Yeah, right, right,
right?
right.
So, um, and suddenly digital photography, you can. I know a lot of photographers hate it. Maybe not today, but back then there was a lot of old timers going, "Damn kids, get off my yard!" Like,
Right, right.
but the fact is, if I take a picture of you, look at my settings, and look at the image on the back of my camera and say it's underexposed, I can take another one, and I'm learning photography really rapidly.
Right.
With film, you have to take the picture, keep a little note. Frame
Yep.
1 was this settings, frame 2,
Yep.
and then go develop them. And then, like a week later, you're like, okay, well, next time, it's just
Yeah,
the
yeah.
learning curve drastically changed. So now
Yeah.
you had a bunch of people, and the technology, the cameras came down in price. So now you have people learning photography at a rapid rate. And studio photography is different than shooting outside.
Right.
And it's not better, but there's pros and cons. And it's hard to do advertising work without a studio. It's hard to shoot that on location.
Yeah, yeah.
So we had 50 members. They sold that building.
First location. 50 members.
Well, we
first.
ended up with like 150 by the time we left.
Okay.
But first month, 50 members, built that up 100, 125, something like that.
Okay.
They sold that business out from under us. Their lease was ending, and they actually kicked us out 6 months before the lease, but we got paid for it anyway. So I had to find a place quickly.
Right.
That was a Potomac Yard place. It was my least favorite of the studios. It was kind of a hurry.
That was second location.
That was the second location
Okay.
where you joined us.
Okay.
Studio A just had a curtain. There was only 3 walls, and it just wasn't my favorite location. And because of that, when some developers were starting to buy up that area, they bought us and our lease. And I think we were only there for like 2 years.
Okay.
So and I had a 5-year lease at that location. And I called them and I said, we want to get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind if we let us out of our lease? And they were like, we don't care. They didn't buy the property for the lease and revenue. They bought it to redevelop.
Right.
Someone just told me they drove by there last week and it's all wiped out. It's all flat.
Wow. Okay.
So we took some time and found this location.
Okay.
And then we put, again, I know some of your audience might be interested in recreating this, which I'm 100%, I will be happy to help with.
Mm-hmm.
We put about $150,000 into this into the renovation.
Okay.
But for that, I got an extremely long lease, and that's the thing. When you're leasing space, you can't lease a space for 5 years and put $100,000 into it.
Right.
It's you're $20,000 a year down before you make any money.
Right.
So, anyway, so that's the transition between each place. The first place, the challenge was, I just wasn't taking it that seriously. I was like, oh, we can help people. That'd be cool. What's my next shoot next week? Like, I was really still focused on photography more. And it was a clubhouse. We'd have like 6 models would be doing a shoot and swing by Union 206 and hang out with us. And we shoot for fun a lot. Like it was just always music playing. It was kind of crazy. Not very sustainable, but it was a good time in my life.
Right.
And then they sold that. We went to the next place. And the next place I was like, okay, we need to, like, how many people can we help? Right. That's when I really started thinking. Some people came to with stories, had a mortgage broker so we started that first studio in 2000. I moved in 2009. In 2010, we opened for rentals.
Okay.
To give you a timeline.
Okay.
I had a member who came in and said, Charles, I'm a mortgage broker. It was 2010. So 2008, the whole housing market crashed.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, right.
But he was still operating. And he's like, I just bought this Nikon, I think it was a D4.
Uh-huh.
I have no idea how to use it, but I want to make a living doing it. I was like, come on. So, we started shooting.
Wow.
He's now, shout out to Jules. He's shooting. He became an event photographer, but he shoots for like Audi, like
really
in Vegas. Audi will do an event and he'll shoot that. He's always Instagramming from the Bahamas and these places where corporate. So he got into very big. He's got I don't know, a dozen or so photographers working under him, that kind of
Wow.
thing. Walked into the studio and said, "This is my camp.
So you got it
Help me."
started Union 206.
He got started because he wanted something more.
Right.
I don't make any photographers, right? I've been very open. I don't believe in competition in this. I think it's just I've never seen a case where if I tell you something, suddenly you got a client that I didn't get.
Right.
It's never happened.
Right.
Um,
That's a fear a lot of people have, though.
it
They don't
is.
want to share.
It's it's a very um, self-defeating fear, though. What has happened is I've said, "Hey, check this new lighting style out. Oh, that's really cool. Can I, modify it? Blah, blah, blah. Hey, Charles, I got a gig I can't show up for. Can you handle it for me? It pays $500. Sure. That has happened.
Okay.
But I don't know of anybody who's gotten a gig because I didn't tell them how to light a scene. Like it's just not, in our world, if you're selling Coca-Cola, Pepsi's the enemy. Right. But for us, I mean, we're all out here. There's plenty of work. There's tons of work out there. How do you get it? That's the hard part. And one way you get it is you build a network of people who love and respect you and trust you.
There it is.
Somebody comes in, if I have a gig I can't do because it's Christmas and I'm going out of town, and I'm like, oh, maybe I can get Troy to do it. Well, if I don't think you're a good photographer or that you'll show up or you are a great photographer, but I know you're really inconsistent with your editing or those kinds of things, guess what? You're not getting that job.
Right.
But if we share and you show me some things and I show you some things, now I know who you are and I'm willing to give you a client.
Right.
So that's we're getting a little philosophical, which we probably will do by the end of this podcast because there's a lot of philosophy that has gone into this part of my life.
So this particular space, and I'll speak as someone that obviously has considered, I want to open up a studio on the other side of the bridge, or I want to, near my house or something like that. But guys, if you are watching this, listening to this, I'm going to be the first to tell you that what Charles has done here at Union 206 is, I'm going to say it's very hard to do because of the diversity that you get within the studio itself. Because we'll have, and I think it's at A and C is 1,800.
Each one is around 1,500. I think 1,700 is A and C is like 1,650 or something along those lines. Right. We're sitting in B, which is 900 square feet, and then we have common area, storage areas, and the whole thing works out about 7,500 square feet.
So when you put that in the context and you think about starting your own space, you think, okay, you need to think about everything you're going to need. You're going to need at least one place to shoot. You're going to need a place to do makeup. You're going to need at least a bathroom. You're going to need a changing area. You're going to need heating and cooling. You're going to need all of these things.
Power. I mean, we installed new power circuits to the main board because if you want to do video, we need it. So there's 6 circuits. Like there's so many little things. And then cleaning.
Yeah.
Photographers are messy. And then it's not their fault. Like it's just, ostensibly most people watching this have been on a shoot. Right. So you've got to shoot. Let's say it's an important shoot. Let's say it's an important shoot for a new look that you're doing. That's a lot of stuff on your mind.
Yeah.
And you're managing the model, the talent. In my case, there's often an art director that works for the company that's kind of like overseeing everything.
Right.
There can be 10 people in the room that with me and my assistant just for the shoot, right? We can have makeup and hair. But so there's a lot of stuff going on. And meanwhile, we can talk about how I interact with my clients, but I get a lot of information from my client before I shoot them. So I've got all that information. And you're trying to create this look. You're not thinking about like cleaning up afterwards. And of course you'll sweep through, but our members are pretty good here, but it's because we were kind of hard on some of them also and got rid of some of them that weren't respectful of the space. So cleaning is if you said as a studio and not as a photographer, what's the thing I thought about most is probably keeping a white cycle while clean with 300 shoots a month coming through.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's the biggest challenge, right? But anyway,
I mean, I think for me, one of the things that's helped my perspective when shooting here is that I've been shooting since the days of film. I had a Nikon 4004s, and I would burn through rolls of film like
right
it was
now.
nobody's business. And where I've lived, I've always had a personal shooting space that I've ended up doing business at, like most people do.
Sure.
But I've I've had clients that have transitioned with me over the years through all of the spaces and places I've been. But having your own space, see when you come here, you basically can show up with a memory card and a camera, and and a lens, and you shoot. But if you've never owned everything else that you're going to be using in the studio, you don't have an
Sure.
appreciation for keeping it neat. So I'm a firm believer in when I leave, I don't want people to know I was there.
Right.
Right. And so I don't try to tear the equipment out. I try to and especially in Studio A, part of one of the techniques I do, I had do this overhead top down light
Mm-hmm.
and got to put sandbags on. I'm nervous the whole shoot. Like, Jesus, please don't go down. But I'm always, you put things back where they belong and prep and all. Yeah. When I book the studio, I don't book, I book time to prep and break down.
Right.
And a lot of people don't do that and they rush because when the next photographer comes, I'm ready to walk out the door and let them come in.
That's probably the second biggest, just as a studio owner thing is, so there's a bunch of ways we could have gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're a popular studio. We have a lot of business come. A lot of people want to shoot. And just back up a little bit. So at some point along the line, it wasn't like on Tuesday I just flipped a switch and said, but at some point along the line I said, you know what? For all the terrible things I did in my youth, I could really help people change their lives by providing this little garden they can grow in, this little safe space they can grow in. And so it became really a mission. The biggest reason why this is not really reproducible is, and it is, but the reason why it doesn't happen a lot is that it's not cost effective. Like I've had a number of businesses. This is a terrible business to be in. If you want to make money, if you want to help people and have interactions, if you know how many photographers I get to talk to on a daily basis as a photographer and share ideas with, that's gold. That's very important to me.
Right.
But it's $30,000 a month to run this place.
30.
Rent, we're 8,000 square feet next to a metro right by the Beltway. Staffed, 20 staff the whole time. We're open 6 days
and I'm gonna say this because I don't know if he will. They're very affordable.
That's why. So I had my last shoot out of town was Chicago. I booked for the client. It was a studio. It was a warehouse. It wasn't. I'm biased, but it wasn't as nice as this place. It didn't come with any lights, but it was a good space to shoot in. They had a good cyc wall. It was $2,000 for the day. There's no half day rate. Sometimes studios like that'll have half day rate. Commercial studios like this. Now you can't compare this to like an office building with a portrait studio. That's where we're priced. We're priced as if you were in a small executive suites kind of like portrait studio. I'll tell you why we're priced like that later, but that's your choice. And I said you can't. I mean, I had tons of money and no bills, and I couldn't have sustained that for very long. Right. And of course, you pass that cost to your client, but most of my clients in DC couldn't afford a $2,000 studio bill.
Right.
Venue cost.
Just the venue.
Right. So, I mean, that might be half their whole shoot. Right. So, I just decided making money on the studio itself was not that important to me. I said, can I do this and make it cost less than $100 to do a shoot, right? We have a 2-hour minimum. If you're a member, it's $45 an hour. Plus tax, you're still under $100. I raised rates once in the last 12 years. And it was over 7 years ago, I think. So it might have been 2015, actually, 2016. So I'm just committed to it's just not in my head to, all right, the studio's a business I got to make money at. And because of that, there's a lot of benefit. I get a lot of benefit from it. But if you're an entrepreneur and a photographer thinking, oh, I'll
Do a studio.
go do a studio, you'd be better off, I don't know, selling cars or something.
Yeah.
You'd be better off. There's other things. You'd be better off just focusing on your photography. Do another kind of,
I mean, because you have a heart for this. I mean, I think that's important. If you don't really have
yeah.
a heart for helping people, because we've talked about this offline. I've been in, and I don't know what changes you made. You made some shifts in some of the folks that were coming through, but you always are mindful of, I know I feel comfortable bringing any of my clients through here,
Right.
like from churches to families to whomever. And you guys have done a good job of, because I know it's tough when you open up and it's like, okay, we got to make some adjustments here and there.
We lost money to do that. And the reason I say that is we were getting a lot of musicians, and they weren't really musicians. They were kids daydream about being musicians. And so to them, a photo shoot for their album they've never cut and probably won't ever cut was, well, we can just go there and drink and smoke and hang out, and that'll be that's for $100.
Right.
I mean, you can't go to a club and get a VIP table for $100. Like, you know what I mean? It was just
right.
And so we stopped that.
Okay.
And it was hard because I don't like to edit anybody.
Right.
Tons of nude shoots happen here.
Right.
My rule is I don't want anybody having sex in my studio. Right. Other than that, though, who am I to say? I mean, some beautiful work comes out. Shout out to Marco. He's doing cool stuff with nudes and projections of asymmetric. There's some really cool stuff going. Figurative is a big deal. So we used to be open till whatever. Like back in the day, we were open till we didn't have a booking, 3 a.m., whatever.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We changed to 11. Like everybody's out of here at 11. And that cut down a lot of those because a lot of those
happen late.
They don't want to leave. They want to start at 10, right?
Right.
So that's cut out. And then it was just one by one. Hey, you can't do that. If you're walking through, Tiffany or Eva is going to be like, is that a bottle? Are those red Solo cups? Why you got red Solo cups? Is that part of your shoot? And occasionally, if we had just had a guy who was doing a small brewery was doing, I think it was vodka or something like that. So if we talk to you and it's certainly not a party and that kind of thing. But I've sacrificed a lot to keep this place open. I put a lot of energy into it. A lot of other people put a lot of energy into it, and it's a place for artists to come work. It's a place for you to grow your own creative spirit. Not just financially, but just it's a place. We have a number of members that are like IT people for the government, right? And they spend all day under fluorescent lights and a little chair in front of a keyboard, and they need to go grow, right? They need it. So that's who we're here for. So that changed it. And the other thing is, look, when you walk in the space, the first thing you see is Ducati and track lighting and big canvas photos and wood floors, and it looks nice.
It does.
I know it looks nice because when people bring their clients through, their clients are like, "Oh wow, I didn't know this was here."
And but that's not part of the price. Not to cut you off, but that is a value add that
we know it.
People don't really.
It's on purpose, right?
You see
if you bring a client in and your client walks in and sees the space, and then they walk into A and it's this giant room with 24-foot ceilings and a huge side wall and lights. They're like, my photographer's the shit, right?
Right, exactly. You're good.
My photographer is awesome. Hey, Janet.
There you go.
I'm with this photographer. You won't believe this. Look at, and people are always walking around the studio with their phones out doing TikToks and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's built in.
Yeah.
Right. Look, I shoot phase 1. My camera body cost me $42,000. I do not need a phase 1 to do my job. I bought that, and that was my present to that's instead of getting a Porsche kind of thing. That's how passionate I'm about photography.
Right.
You do not need that camera. I'm not saying I have it to brag about. I'm saying it because there is a side benefit. When you spend $8,000 on a photo shoot with me and you walk in, if I'm holding my backup camera, which is a beautiful camera, is a Sony A7R III mirrorless.
Okay.
I took it to Cuba, did a whole book. It's a fantastic camera. Definitely could do any work that I want to do with that tiny little camera. But when you show up and your photographer's tethered with the phase one and a giant lens and there's hair, it's a marketing thing to some degree. Now, the phase one's a fantastic camera too. My point is, if you are doing this creatively, you've got to remember you're still a business. You still have a brand that has to be. You should be dressing similarly for all your clients. You should change that dress.
Please say that again.
Look, you will always see me in a cabbie hat. I like cabbie hats. I'm Irish, kind of can't, I like them. Mm-hmm. But the reason you'll always see me in, have you ever seen me without a cabbie hat on?
Now that you said,
it's part of my brand.
Yeah.
Like when my clients see me, they're like, it's not a ball cap. It's a little more formal than a ball cap, but it's not a friggin' fedora either. I have a bunch of those too, but this didn't work. It's a thing.
Right.
I have a little beard going on, but I don't have tattoos on my face. Now, that doesn't mean if you're a tattoo artist or a photographer with tattoos on your face, that could totally work for you. Mm-hmm. We have a member that does really well. His face is all tatted up, but it's part of his brand, right? Mm-hmm. You are your brand when you're a small business. You're almost like a model, right? Yeah. To some degree. I can't tell you how many times I've started a shoot with someone and they're like, this is the best photo shoot I've ever had. We haven't taken a photo yet. I'm already the best photographer they've worked with.
Wow.
Because of the experience. So when I was putting together a studio, one, I wanted that experience for my clients, but it was a conscious decision on how do we make sure that when Troy walks in, his clients are like, this place is awesome.
Yeah.
My photographer is awesome. This whole experience is awesome. Let's do this again next month.
I mean, and it gives you, even no matter if it's Tiffany here or whomever's here, the other benefit to that is you look like you have people working in your it's all part of the brand, and that's really what has deterred me. Like, why do I really want to go do this on my own? Like, for what? It doesn't make. It's convenient. It's right off the Beltway. It's in the perfect spot.
I'm always on. So in every business I've ever had, I have a background in marketing. Mm-hmm. With Union, I've always been a little hesitant to try to sell it to you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, try to be like, oh, this is why you should come to Union 206. And we've never marketed at all, ever. Never done we do some light social media. We're terrible with social media, right? Mm-hmm. But it's because I don't want to get in that mindset of we need more people, we need more money, we need more. It's hard. I don't know how to convey just the sincerity that this studio exists because I wanted to help photographers and had grew into I want to help artists. We do a number of things for models that people are not even aware. We're a safe place for models. So if you're out in a model and you're staying in town and you're unsafe, there's a whole list of models that know that they can call us and we will come get them and throw them on a couch in Studio B or whatever. There's we're not here to take. Look, it's expensive to run the place, so we wouldn't exist without all the members saying this is valuable. We need, and it's worth me paying for.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's just a different. Even with my photography, I'm more cutthroat about pricing and those kinds of things. So that all that said, it's always hard for me to say, yes, we're awesome. Come on down. It's hard for me to give you that commercial.
Right.
But it is awesome. And it doesn't exist anywhere else. There's a number of studios that have come and gone. And it's because we're uniquely, look, in the first days, I paid for everything. We didn't have enough, even with 50 members, we didn't have enough to pay for Old Town space.
Right.
You can imagine what the rents are down there. And because that was I don't know, it was fine for me. And again, I don't want to be too oh, Charles is so awesome. Look, I get a lot of benefit out of interacting, and I have an awesome studio to shoot in. Like I would have needed to do that anyway. It
Right.
probably wouldn't be 8,000 square feet, but um, I definitely get a benefit. It's back to that whole, rising tide, all ships kind of thing. I started teaching because I wanted to help people. My teaching rate is ridiculously low. But I don't do it to make money. I do it because it's cool to have a group of people or a person who's trying to work on defining more shadows in their background, or how do I shoot silhouettes, or how do you capture dancers in mid, like those kinds of things. It's how do we shoot leather, like without too much specular highlight. Like those kinds of things are really cool for me to. I get a lot out of that.
Okay.
So it's not totally altruistic. I'm admitting that I get a lot from that, but the rub is hopefully you get a lot too.
That's one of the biggest reasons that I started this podcast, because we're going to talk to more than just photographers, video. We're talking interior designers,
Awesome.
we're artists, hair, and anybody that's in the creative space, because I believe, one, the conversation should be had because we can all learn from each other, whether it's photographer to photographer to makeup artist, whatever it is. But two, we need that mental exercise to be able to say, hey, I'm not in this by myself. This is because a lot of times as artists, you keep everything to yourself. That's why I personally believe we see so many artists that are well known going through so many things, because your releases through your art. But if you're having challenges, you can feel like, well, they're all successful, because Instagram makes everybody look successful, but there are certain challenges that we all share because we're creatives at heart, regardless of what our particular genres are.
Yeah, I'm a photographer. The whole point of photography is to trick people, right? I mean, essentially, sometimes you trick them into seeing the truth, right?
Right.
Often that's the case, but what you see on Instagram is, look, I know I'm going to come off like the boomer, but Instagram, social media is a very useful tool. If you're thinking about that more than you're thinking about new ways to shoot women in upside down on scarves, or if you're in the wrong place. You're thinking about the destination and you're forgetting the journey. We're gonna get very philosophical on you. At the end of the day, the other big reason why, maybe not why I did it, but after we had those 50 members and it kept growing, and then I started teaching and I started talking to a lot of people, interacting, is that we have it's a troubled world. Now, I don't know if it was always this troubled and I just was younger, and I'm seeing more of it now. I'm not sure. I admit that I'm not sure, but I see a lot of strife and trouble out there. Between races, between religions, between political camps, between corporations, between generations. I don't remember when I'm Gen X, right? I don't remember as a Gen X seeing articles like this generation versus this generation and why you should hire one. Like, I don't remember that.
Right.
If you and I sit down you could be as diametrically opposed to everything I believe in, and if we sit down and look at and put a shot together and we start talking about, okay, rule of thirds and how are we going to what kind of textures do we need to put in? That's good, but are the shadows too deep? We start talking about that, everything disappears. And that's just maybe it's not even a good example, but when you start talking about art with people, it's like talking about mathematics. Like, it doesn't matter where you're from, numbers add up, and you'll, like, genius mathematicians can discuss, right? Artists can discuss across all lines. I don't care. I've never seen a situation where, I've literally seen Muslim and a Jew in the studio putting together shots. I don't know, like,
you don't see that.
Maybe, I'm sure it happens. Like, I'm not saying it's the only way, but I see art and the creation of art as something that only humans do. When humans do it, it kind of overrides everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's good.
I like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I want for me to say, hey, I'm a part of that, or I'm supporting that, or I'm doing this tiny little thing by creating the space where that can happen. That's really fulfilling. And at the end of the day, especially as you get older, looking for those fulfilling things it's important. It's a dramatic effect on my life. The studio, running the studios as a rental studio, has caused me untold strife, and you know and financially it just probably has not been worth it. I'm not saying we don't make any money, but it's just all the effort, energy. It's not worth it if money's your goal.
Yeah.
But man, we've really like changed some lives, and people have grown up. Other thing about photography and videography and some other of the arts is nobody has, as a photographer, professional photographer working for national companies, nobody's ever asked me for a resume. Like, where did you go to school? What kind of resume? Like, I mean, certainly they want to know your other jobs that you've had, but nobody's said, so I told you how I grew up. Photography would have been a great start for me, because if I want to be an accountant, there's a barrier to entry. The barrier to entry to a photographer is honestly an iPhone. Like, you can get creative. Around 2010, iPhoneography was like a thing, and it hit the DMV like crazy. We had people all over the studio with like their phones, which I was initially a little like, get a camera. But then what I started seeing is what they were doing with it, and creativity is part of taking something and making something completely cool and different out of it. So,
yeah, I think Chase Jarvis. So you remember back then when iPhones came out, his whole thing was the best camera is the one you have with you. And I find myself,
I've said those words so many times.
I found myself like sometimes with all the camera equipment and all that, it's so easy to just grab my phone and just. Sometimes you just want to capture the moment. You don't care about megapixels. You don't care about.
Right.
You just like, I just need something. I need this moment right now.
Right.
And if I break my camera out, people change when they see the big cameras.
Sure.
But phones
that's true.
make
that
people so. People are so used to phones now, they don't freeze up. It's more commonplace now.
You're right.
So, but listen, before we end this, with you having the experience that you've had, what bit of advice, because like I said, I got started in film. We've all been around this for a long time. For someone that's either interested in getting into photography at this point in their life, or they've already started but they're just starting on their journey, is there any advice that you could share with them to help them to focus on
for a photographer? So anything I could say that's a cliche is probably true, right? But at the end of the day, it has to be more. I hate to use has to, right? Got one piece of advice. There should be the whole class on this. I read a book on this. I think there's a couple of quick things. One, stay humble. Okay. Do I have time for a quick story?
Sure.
Shooting third year, getting paid to shoot fashion. I run across a photographer by the name of Mark DeLong. He's out of Florida. Just his work online. And I'm looking at his work, and I'm looking at my work. And they're similar in the way a teddy bear is similar to a grizzly bear, right? My work is nothing like his work. And I realized that. I'm like, okay, he's a fashion photographer. I'm a fashion photographer. Why does our work look so different? And why is his so much better? And one of the things I realized was I would have my lighting setups, but leather shoots different than vinyl. Silk shoots different than satin. T-shirt material shoots different than flannel. So I took 3 months off and just went and just shot every fabric I could find. And what I found was side lighting was critical because the threads in the cloth. Anyway, So my advice is, one, stay humble. Two, look for those things. It's very easy, especially after you get a little work, to get caught up in, I got a gig, I got 4 gigs this month, I'm a photographer, I made it.
Mm-hmm.
You have not made it, brother. Like, you haven't even scratched the surface, unless that's all you want. And if that's all you want, cool, then you don't need my advice. But if you want to go to the extreme that you can get to, I learn new stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing around with video game software, creation software now, to try to change my composite. Like, it's very challenging there's always another level to learn. As soon as you think you know everything about what you're doing, you don't. There's tons of advice I give on, financial planning, and don't forget it's a business and all those kinds of things. But for the photographer, for the photography,
mm-hmm.
some of my coolest lighting setups have come because one light didn't flash, right? And so it ruined the shot.
Absolutely.
And the shot looked bad, but I could see a thing in it. Yep. So I made a few alterations. And now I got a new light. Now I got a new tool in my belt.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one. Just one more. The most important thing is specialize. If it doesn't make sense. Like, when you're coming into it, it doesn't seem like this is true, but it is very true. If you go to your websites right now and it says, I do sports, birthdays, fashion, commercial, events, weddings, nobody's gonna hire you. Not nobody. Some people will hire you. But if I'm having a wedding, I'm looking for a wedding photographer. I'm looking for somebody who specializes in weddings. If I'm looking for black and white photography, I'm finding the guy that does black and white. If I were starting over and going into, especially in the retail space. So commercial is, you work for businesses, usually advertising, sometimes real estate. Everything else is retail, like all those things I mentioned. I would have 5 different websites, and I'd have one that was just black and white photography.
That's good.
Right?
Oh, we're going to talk off camera, but go ahead.
You need to brand yourself, because what ends up happening is, as a photographer, you say, I don't want to lose any business. If you're looking for a sports guy, I can do it. And you probably can. But if you're looking for a sports guy, you're not looking for the generalist. You're looking for a specialist. And every client you have is looking for a specialist. So be a specialist. And so I'd say pick one thing. Weddings is low-hanging fruit, but it is good business. Headshots is another one that you can just do a lot more of them. Like, there's different reasons to pick different ones, but pick something and then brand that thing. Now, you can do more photography, but if I'm looking for, I don't know, somebody who does, I'm an actor, I need headshots, right? Have an actor's headshots page, right? Now, you can use the same images that you used for your business headshot page, potentially. The stylization would be a little different, but you can do that. But what's it cost? $5 for a website? Spend $50 a month, have 10 websites. Have them all come back. I mean, with technology, we can do that. But you really have to specialize, because you are missing out on so much business if you are a generalist.
I think with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up, man. I really appreciate your time. Like I said, we came in, I don't know, I think it was in November. I was in with a shooter, said, hey, man, I want you to come on the podcast, starting this podcast up. And this episode is going to do well, because I personally, we know several of the same people. Other photographers are good friends of mine. We shoot here. But this is like a community here. And I know all of us that come in here, we want to make sure that we're taking care of the space. One, because it's a really nice space, but two, I mean, I think that's just the right thing to do, because we don't want it to go. We don't want it to go anywhere. Yeah, for sure. So listen, guys, thank you guys for tuning in to this episode, and we will catch you on the next one. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Prime Creative Podcast. For questions, comments, or just to get in contact with us, you can reach us at show@primecreativepodcast.com.